Welcome everyone to the January 22nd Utilities Committee meeting. We're getting started with Blackjack Creek Watershed Assessment.
Yeah, Zach will be, actually he'll be speaking to the first three topics. So I guess with Zach, and he's just gonna give like kind of 10,000 footish overviews of the Blackjack Creek Watershed Assessment, our 2019-2024 MPDS permit, and the draft comments. So we have a new permit coming up, and then a proposed ILA with Kitsap County Conservation District. So I guess with
I should be able to breeze through these pretty quick. The Blackjack Creek Watershed Assessment, the sections that are in your packets they're pared down quite a bit from the full. We didn't want to give the full report at this meeting.
It's like hundreds of pages.
Several hundred pages long. But the tribe got together with a consultant called ESA out of Seattle to put together a full watershed assessment. They've released their final report as of December, and this is pertaining specifically to the lower Blackjack corridor within city limits. And they have some suggestions for what they would like to see for watershed upgrades, repairs, etc. And this is more information than anything else, just to keep everybody aware of where we're at and what the work that the tribe has done. So if you have any questions, I'm available after the meeting as well.
Is Allison Sullivan still there?
Yes, she is.
Okay. Was there a rough dollar amount that's associated with accomplishing all of these?
They didn't associate any dollar amounts for
Okay.
this. It's just recommendations for watershed improvements.
Okay.
Are they offering grants?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, actually, the city has a couple in
Okay.
for National Estuary Program funding for a couple of these culvert. Usually, what we put in, one of the main ones we put in for is taking any direct connections to Blackjack Creek and removing them. So basically, we would have a pipe that would discharge into the creek. We're going to back it up further out of the watershed and then terminate it to an infiltration or dispersion facility. So basically, upgrading a lot of the stuff that we already have existing. If you want more information on those proposals, I can get that to anybody that needs it as well.
Is there an opportunity, maybe here's a mouth of Blackjack
I've
Creek
not seen
with
that.
the Community Service Day to do any, volunteer work down
Yeah,
there and
that's-
have a more coordinated effort? Last year was kind of haphazard.
Yeah.
We said we were gonna do a beach cleanup, but we didn't really have any information what we should be or shouldn't be doing, and.
Sure. Yeah, we definitely can do that.
Is that just removing concrete panels?
We wanted to keep it simple, so we didn't need to get a permit for that. It was anything that anybody could individually carry by hand that didn't require machinery.
People started doing that, and then they were told not to do it, so.
Interesting.
Yeah, I remember that.
So it'd be nice to have somebody out there
Sure.
of authority saying, yeah, this is what we're doing, and
Okay. Yeah.
I have the date, so
So is there any, there was some,
it's in April.
there was some rumor that the tribe was going to try to get a grant that would effectively remove the Bay Ford property, Etta Turner, recreate an estuary.
During our discussions with them, we highly advised against it because of the dollar amounts involved. They're aware of our concerns. Carrie and I were at that meeting, and we did express concern with all the development that's going on down there. Their initial proposal would be to restore the alluvial fan at the mouth of the stream, which would, if you look
The
at
current mouth.
the current mouth would be restored to the historic mouth, which would basically eliminate a good portion of Titus Ford and almost all of West Bay Center. So it's not right. It would cost them an incredible amount of money to be able to do that.
Because
So
they'd have to, they couldn't condemn those properties, they'd have to purchase them, right?
yeah, so there's a lot to it. There's a bunch of cultural resources assessments that would need to be done. Several things involved.
Pushing $10 million.
So that's probably it's listed in here as one of their top priorities, but it's kind of from my impression, it's kind of moved to the back for feasibility. So
So it's nothing that they're presently, so let me ask you this.
they don't have any interest in pursuing any purchasing of property. These are just recommendations on how to.
But let's say West Bay Center were to redevelop, would they oppose that redevelopment because of this?
It would depend on how it existed the current system, as far as I understand. This is ideally they would like to see their proposal. I'll tell you which page it's on here in just a second.
As long as it meets code, how could they?
Well, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you have to get a shoreline permit, you have to get an HPA.
Yeah.
Are they gonna somehow use that opportunity to somehow
They'll fight it to receive.
fight it?
No, but the one meeting we've had about the possible redevelopment of that site, they were actually proactively saying we might be interested in doing some restoration work as an amenity to the
And
project.
one developer I've talked to wants to soften the shoreline as part of the process.
Yeah, so we might,
Right.
get part of the way there.
Softening the shoreline though is different than getting in the way of the project, because they ultimately want to somehow recreate the alluvial fan, so.
On page 18, it discusses the specifics of.
So
some
this
of
is
their
nothing we
ideas.
accept.
Right.
This is.
No, I'm just saying.
This is their body of work.
No, we've had the ability to comment on this though, so, and we did voice our concerns about how the difficulties of LBJ 1 that they have listed in here for the tidal delta restoration. So yeah, they just talk about strategies to address it for, in a perfect world type strategies.
Right. Now
When you
the,
say soft, do you mean soft bulkhead alternatives?
it's like
Just like
using-
shore friendly.
Yeah.
Using
Step,
logs.
step back, because we got this harsh.
Anchoring logs. those
Anchoring
kinds of-
logs and
Yeah.
things like that. Now, LBJ 6,
Does
I-
it still exist there? I've never seen this
oh,
before.
it's there,
I need to go
unfortunately.
look. It's off of Kendall.
Take a knife with you.
Knife?
Don't go down there.
Don't go down
I
there.
won't go down there without a police escort.
Oh, because there's people there.
There's
Yes.
an entire convent, or a convene living down there right now that we're currently
I may
working
have to
on.
go look there Thursday.
Vacating.
We're doing a count of the homeless, so there are people.
You'll be down there then, yes.
Okay, so should you go down on Kendall?
Are-
You can go,
yes.
there's a trail coming off the end of Kendall, yeah.
They've improved it, it's
I
much
won't go
easier to
alone.
walk that way.
Yeah, I won't go alone. Yeah.
Anyway,
Are
I would like someday for the city to underground those water lines.
Yeah.
Do an
Uh-huh.
HDPE direct bury, get rid of that. We should actually take the bridge off as a
Talking about the
earlier,
Boy Scout
the
bridge.
Boy Scout bridge. It's been an unintended
They're using it for
consequence.
building materials down there.
Well, they're kind of tearing it
camps.
apart right now, but.
Are you going down with Mr. Summers?
I think so, yeah.
He's
Yeah,
a good
Jim
guy.
Summers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we put that gate there.
I call him anytime we see him
Okay,
down
good,
there.
yeah, because he has the best sense of where people are.
And he can get things done with them, he can talk to them.
I've heard there's people under the Soroptimist
What's that?
platform. Have you heard of that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen him down there. There's,
Even at high tide, it's still dry.
no, they've got a cardboard rudimentary structure
That's what
underneath
I've
there.
heard.
Yeah. And it's
good information.
as
Yeah.
seen, so they're in and out.
Somebody else paid for it.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Very interesting.
So I've included a high clip description of some of the proposed stormwater permit changes that will be seen
Next year, 2019.
in 2019. Yes. We went through the provisional and preliminary draft comment period already. Ecology's preparing a draft based on the comments and feedback from local jurisdiction caucuses, the stormwater work group, and the state and federal agency work groups. In a high clip nutshell here, these bullets will outline some of the things that are changing. We are anticipating a lot more focus on source control. They're going to want us to update our mapping a little bit tighter. There are some new requirements for illicit discharge detection and elimination, but that's nothing that we can't handle on our own. It's actually going to ease the process. They're developing an internal database so that we don't have to manage everything on our end now. We can go through their database. It's a good thing for us. Monitoring and assessment, we're still participating in the pay-in option for the stormwater work group. And our representation in the local jurisdiction caucus has submitted a draft comment letter, which is in this packet as well. We have submitted our comments to the stormwater work group, and this letter here is the formal letter from the chair of the stormwater work group regarding section 8, which is the monitoring section of the permit. There may be a slight dollar increase on this, but we're fighting to try and mitigate that
Dollar increase to who?
to the permittees. So our pay-in option that we have per year, we have one of the cheapest pay-ins based on population in comparison to a lot of the other jurisdictions
It's
around
what we
here.
pay annually
It's
for a
a few
permit.
$1,000s. It would be
To the
maybe
state?
yes,
Yeah.
for the permit
To fund
to
them.
be a member of this group. It may go up for us $100, $200. The county might get it a little higher, just based on population.
So who's our stormwater work group? It's Paulsville, Bremerton.
That's our education and outreach group.
Oh, what's the stormwater work? Who's involved in this SWG?
I'm not on the stormwater work group. For us, it would be probably Cami Alphabet from Bainbridge Island.
Okay.
There's not, we're on the local jurisdiction caucus, but I didn't want to volunteer to be a member of the work group without talking to you about that first. I've been involved in it in the past from different agencies, but I didn't want to try and take a chair on it that would take a lot of time. We don't really have the free time to be able to attend all the meetings and do the full member.
So we just have your local water quality group or whatever just has this one.
I attend these
representative.
meetings as much as I can, but I'm not on the chair. I'm not a chair, so decisions, they do refer to us, but we tend to be secondary to the decision-making process.
Okay.
I defer to the local jurisdiction caucus for decisions, because that's all the cities and smaller counties consolidated.
Okay.
Probably the only thing that I read when I briefly read this that concerns me is first page D, number 4, conduct inspections of private property and businesses. Do we have the authority to enter somebody's private?
We're going to have to
property?
do some code revisions. If this goes through as it's written, yes.
Okay. I can see pushback there.
So some of the issue, yes,
Mhm.
I foresee the same thing. Some of the issues with this come from.
I guess I would push back on this because so we don't have to change our code.
Right.
We have, I mean, so we have this in two current areas of our utility. Water connections, so our cross-connection control program, we're actually mandated by the state to operate a cross-connection control program. As a purveyor, it's always a challenge to get onto the property, so that's why I was trying to work, Nick, more with with your group so that when they do tenant improvements and things of that nature, where we're getting into the building at that time, we have the ability to assess. Unfortunately, if a business that used to be in a retail shop, I don't know, like they used to just sell marine supplies and suddenly they're a laundromat or they're a chiropractor moves in and we don't realize that some chiropractors now use X-ray imagery. Well, those are Table 9 cross-connection control. And so we have to stay on top of them. We'd like to get to the point where we could go and do inspections, but we're running into the same issue as this whole trespass.
Yeah, we've been better though lately. We've revised our letters that go out. We're getting more participation, and so it's not been as big of an issue as it had been in the past.
But we don't have it in code where we can go on the property.
We do.
Oh, we do have it
We
in
do.
code? I thought it was still voluntarily
No.
allowing us.
Our code refers to the state's mandate that we have the authority to either enter their property or shut their water off.
Right.
And so they usually choose to let us on the property.
So this bullet is intended to be a way to bolster the PIC program that the county health district is currently implementing. They don't have an enforcement component, so if they go to a local business and the local business is causing pollution, they can tell them how to, through education, how to better not pollute, but they have no real authority to
That's a carton.
Yeah, they don't have any authority. So this is an effort for them to push to local jurisdictions to get some code in place that we could go to our code enforcement officer if they were having an issue and perhaps do a citation.
Yeah, we're also dealing with that in our we're setting up our grease trap program, and we have to have the ability to go on site.
That's
to do
a
inspections.
perfect parallel to it, yeah.
So, okay.
So if you do have any more questions on this, by all means, send me an
Yeah,
email.
no, I know.
Or
I
a
know.
phone call and I
I can
can
already
get you
do
more
it.
information.
What's your email?
ZHOLT@cityofport.org. One of the big ones on this, on the back page, is F, which is the long-term municipal stormwater planning component. It's basically going to, as it sits now with the language that's in it, it's going to require us to do watershed scale planning for any development within our systems in the future, so that we already know what our current existing inventory is for pipes and conveyances within these systems. If somebody's going to be building or developing within the region, They really can't affect the receiving waters in any deleterious way. So it basically, they have a transfer program option. There's several different things that they're pushing with this. They want us to basically incorporate some of the different state documents that have been put out, one of which is Building Cities in the Rain. Some people are familiar with that. And the Stormwater Control Transfer Program that Ecology developed. So basically, if we have a watershed of high priority that's determined, say, we'll just say for conversation, Blackjack. If somebody's proposing a development within the Blackjack Basin, they can't contribute any deleterious development to it. Something that would affect it has to be mitigated. So,
Well, so following the stormwater manual, they're saying the city's gonna have to develop some sort of model.
we're going to.
We're not gonna require the
It's not
engineer.
gonna be like the phase ones when they had the modeling component. This is a little bit different. I can get to the specifics of it here.
I guess, I mean, is this saying that the city's gonna have to have our own model? Because I'm looking at like a concept versus some other local engineers where, you know, you're not asking them to model the entire watershed if they want to put in a Leschwab tire, where they have to not just do their on-site mitigation, but they have to do some sort of watershed analysis too? Is that what this is saying?
No, it's actually on the regulator to have that information.
That's what I'm saying, is so you're not asking the developer's engineer to do some sort of thing. The cities, we're gonna have to develop a stormwater.
We're gonna have a plan for each of our basins according to
So,
this proposal.
so we have now a model, like we do with our water and our sewer. We're gonna have a storm drainage model,
Yes, it'll be similar.
and somebody proposes to build a Firestone on Bethel, and that goes into Blackjack Creek, so that goes into that watershed.
So the original model component of this that the phase ones had to do, the Bear Creek watershed was the one that they put a bunch of money into. They invested millions of dollars into modeling what they could and couldn't, what was currently there and what they could contribute to it. And the model showed they had way too many pipes already connecting into the system for water quality issues.
Right, but I guess what I'm getting at is,
So it wasn't beneficial.
should it be, are we gonna get in a situation where the engineer of record is meeting the DOE manual for their on-site mitigation so that we can, you know, approve their LDAP or storm permit, land disturbing activity permit or storm permit, and then we come up with our model and we say, sorry, you can't. I mean, is that a potential?
As I understand it, it's informative for us to be able to say, in excess of the manual, in this basin, you may have to do X, Y, and Z because of the existing.
That feels like a real slippery slope where we're gonna be getting into telling somebody that you're
Stormwater.
following the manual.
Stormwater moratorium.
Yeah, stormwater moratorium, because now our model says, sorry, you can't discharge to Blackjack Creek anymore.
We have until February 2nd to submit a comment letter on this.
Well, we know how that's
Okay,
always
so it sounds
worked in
like
the
you
past.
guys got some work to do on this, because this isn't something that's acceptable to us.
Aren't they rolling this out with the larger jurisdictions first and?
They've already rolled it
To
for the
phase one,
phase
yeah.
ones,
Okay.
and they're building on it in this next.
We want to be on
permitting.
record that we oppose this if this gets shoved down our throat.
I've got a 5-pager on this I can send out to everybody if they're interested. I just didn't want to, I'm already
I think
choking up. the spirit.
we don't need, internally, we
Yeah.
to oppose this.
And they're also submitting a new manual, stormwater management manual for Western Washington in 2019. The good news is, there's no major functional changes to it. It's more operational and making it more user-friendly. So we
Yeah.
shouldn't see any significant changes in the manual.
User-friendly. Define user-friendly.
Easier to read. It's not getting any worse. How's that?
Yeah.
However, when this gets shoved
For
down
now.
our throat,
For now.
we're on record that we didn't want
They
it.
told me it shouldn't affect us, like code-wise.
Right.
Shouldn't have to
Yeah,
do any
that's
code
our
updates or
understanding
anything.
too.
Okay,
Okay.
well, that was,
Pleasant.
wasn't it?
Pleasant.
I thought this new
Oh, yeah.
permit was gonna be fairly benign, but I was wrong. Okay, and then the interlocal agreement,
The ILA for this is actually a real simple one. Are you familiar with the Conservation District's rain garden program?
I know they're working with, is that Master Builders?
Yeah, so this is almost
Or
identical.
Master Gardeners, I mean.
This interlocal agreement is almost identical to Paulsbo's that they just signed. This basically will allow anybody within the city's jurisdiction to get a rain garden through them. It doesn't open up more funding options. Like Kitsap has a $1,000 stipend option that they can give to a landowner to put a rain garden on their property. But the thing about this, Kitsap is the cheapest game out there. The local, I just got done with a training on this that WSU put on, and all the local companies can't compete with them for cost. They have their own gardening program they can provide the plants with. They have their own access to soil media mixes. So it's the cheapest game in town, but unless we do an ILA for this, they can't really build in city jurisdiction. So all this is opening up another opportunity for citizens that are interested in rain gardens to be able to have a cheaper option.
I think we got a question from like the Rockwell condos. They were asking if they put in something like that, if it would lower the rates.
No.
It's not, yeah, that's not how they work.
Yeah.
We don't have an incentive program for that currently. And they get fairly complex to be able to keep them fair across the board.
We don't have that for anybody, do we?
No, but you
Yeah, I
got,
don't think we do.
this is that larger conversation, so if anybody asks that, and I know we've talked about in this past, it's very important to understand the difference between individual property mitigation versus the philanthropic Puget Sound protection. So having people, when you, and I'll just use the example, you turn 10 acres of trees into 10 acres of buildings. You have some Department of Ecology manual that you have to follow to mitigate for that change, for that adding of hard surfaces. That's completely separate from our NPDES permit. Other than our NPDES permit, make sure that we make people comply with the manual. And we had the same conversation in the lumberyard. They were talking about, they should be able to reduce the rates because they pay these storm fees. It's like, no, you're paying the storm fees to protect the Puget Sound. You had to put in a big storm facility to manage when you turned your trees into buildings. And so it's really important to understand those two things. Our NPDES permit program has to do with education and outreach, trying to find illicit discharges, sweeping the streets, cleaning the catch basins. It has more to do with
Repairing too.
Yeah, when you drive to Safeway and you drive on those roads, you're getting metals off your brakes and asbestos and dropping oil, and our NPDES permit tries to deal with those larger, keeping the Puget Sound clean, making sure marinas aren't doing things they shouldn't do, or golf courses, agriculture. What people do individually on their property, whether they live in a housing development where they have a pond and the HOA cleans that pond every year, or the cities, our facilities, but more importantly, like at Harrison, the big pond, that's mitigation for conversion of that property, and it's ongoing. It's not kind of what we do with the more NPDES-based permit, other than there is the one, aspects of compliance with development, but they're two separate things. So if Rockwell, it's important not to mix the two. To say, well, if we did a rain garden, we don't have to pay our NPDES permit. That's the same thing as when Evergreen Lumber came and said, we're paying this, we're cleaning our own ponds, why are we paying this thing? They're two separate things, distinct.
Yeah, it's a fair share thing for paying in for
Right.
maintenance of the
One is
facility.
one thing. The NPDES permit, to some degree, is like your carbon footprint. You as an individual have an impact on the Puget Sound, where the other one has to do with specific on-site mitigation.
Yeah, there are several people in the city that have called asking about rain garden installation and are still interested in them, even if it doesn't offer a credit, just to
Right.
improve water quality. So that's what this is, just to give them more options.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope. I guess, is the reason I wanted to speak to that, because now we're going back into the whole mitigation, and now we're gonna give people credit for.
No, that's a good explanation. It's just that when someone asks me, I'm thinking,
Yeah,
because
it's,
their logic is I'm doing something to take care of my
right.
properties.
Right, but the other one is more, think of it as more of a carbon
Collective,
footprint.
okay.
It's the collective for the
Yeah.
Puget Sound.
Yeah, they're paying to help us reduce our imprint on our
Right.
municipal
Or-
structure.
so-
As a citizen of the city.
Right,
They
so
can do
remember,
more if they want, yeah.
so it started with the watersheds. So I actually was on a watershed committee for Sinclair back in the late 80s, early 90s. Dyes was, I think, our first one. And so what came out of those watershed committees is we all know what our point pollutants are. Those are we have two. We have our treatment plant, and Bremerton has their treatment plant for Sinclair. So we have, those are regulated NPDES permit point discharges. Non-point pollutants are urban runoff, all the outfalls from cities, golf courses, you know, the fertilization getting into the wetlands, marinas, animals that are allowed to graze and poop when you got a stream running right through the middle of it. Those were the non-point pollutants that were identified. What came out of those non-point pollutants, to some degree, were these programs ultimately, where they're trying to, in the NPDES permit, was a direct, the urban runoff was the worst contributor to the decay of the Puget Sound. And so that's where basically our NPDES permit, to me, was where it was born, was out of these watershed analysis. So we're dealing with the non-point pollutants. That was the point of that.
Thanks for a meeting where we use the word poop.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, you're in utilities.
Utilities, yeah.
We can talk
Be
about
glad
that.
we don't have to scratch and sniff here.
Okay. Speaking of, well, no. Okay, so if we're ready then, we can, and I guess Zach, if you can stick around if you want, or you can, whichever you want. We're gonna move on to Annapolis Creek. And this is just a very quick update to let you know that we did advertise, and because this is using city money, and because we still haven't really made
Our stormwater utility money.
our stormwater utility money, and we still haven't really finalized 100% the auditor's interpretation of the federal guidelines. So we did advertise for this. We didn't select that the last year, did we? We advertised.
We advertise.
We received a number of proposals. We scored those, and then we interviewed. We ultimately selected Reed Middleton. And so where we're at right now is we'd originally were looking at 100% and permit proposal. And I had, winged that that'd be about a $400,000 effort. When we got into the actual negotiation phase, the design team, and rightly so, basically said, you really can't take this to 100% design in one step. You'd have intermediate steps, but this is way too big of there are too many elements. You've got the actual culvert, and if you just were going to replace the culvert and look at nothing else, then you could do that. But because you have the culvert, and then you really have the upstream, we really decided there needed to be alternatives that would legislatively be decided. So we have to come to council to say, for example, and this is the big one, we really need to remove Arnold Street, right? I mean, that's a big decision to say, we're gonna buy those homes and we're gonna create an estuary where Arnold is built, because
Is it all in
Arnold
the cities and a part of the county?
is,
right down there.
Arnold is in the county, and all the houses to the east are in the county. Only the homes that front Arnold on the west side are in the city. So I'm just saying, this has to be a part of this analysis, because what you have is,
So how could we, from a public policy standpoint, condemn homes that are in the county?
well, one is part of this process is also to work with the county and see what their flavor is, because they've been dealing with this for years.
They've done some assessment work.
They've done some assessment, they've tried to do some Band-Aid repairs, so they're struggling with it as much as we are. The issue is you have a road that was built in the middle of estuary, similar to what we have down here at the end of Port Orchard Boulevard, that it isn't the culvert or the box culvert that's causing the flooding. It's the fact that they're in the floodplain. They're below the high tide. So when you ever have high rainfall, and this is a very large watershed that goes all the way up to, that thing goes all the way up even beyond Mile Hill.
It goes
Like to the county park, right?
beyond
Yeah, it goes
the
up to
SK
Jackson.
Mall, all the way up near Jackson.
So, have we had any discussions with the county?
Not yet. So where we're at right now is we've just received this proposal. So we've selected, this proposal will get us to 30% design and get us to, with alternatives, and it will get us to all permits kind of in alignment, not actually issuing permits or requesting issuance, but it'll get understanding of where we're at with all the agencies. And that's going to involve, talking to the county. Ultimately, we're going to, let's say we came to the council and said, Kitsap County is on board, we need to remove our own. And we have a funding source. I mean, we have a major issue here. This isn't just, we can make this just fixing a culvert. We can do that. And that'll be part of the alternatives. It's, you know what, we're just going to deal with the road aspect, which is the failing of the box
What are
culvert.
your biggest concerns other than the houses?
Cost.
Well, I'm not.
The
this is-
process.
Well, no, this would be grant, this would be.
This is a near-term action for the Puget Sound Partnership.
Mm-hmm.
This is, they know about this regionally. We're in for grant funding for this. We have
This has been through the
years.
LIO for years.
This is an LIO-approved project, so if
We
money
just don't get
comes-
very far because we haven't done any of the preliminary work. We don't score well because we have
It's
this
not regional.
nebulous thing that, yeah, we need to deal with this, but we don't know what.
We are in the
What
four-year
it
work
is that we need to deal with.
So it's in the four-year work plan now.
You had mentioned one of the alternatives was just to do the culvert.
Why not?
and
Can we-
set the-
So let me
But
back
can
up.
you do
So-
the culvert in anticipation of follow-on activity?
Well, we could. I mean, we could. The problem is there's the box culvert. Then next to the box culvert is a CMP culvert that goes from the city into the county. And then you've got, I think, another culvert that's in the county, and then you've got this ditch the county's been trying to increase flow, but they can't increase flow because it's underwater, right? So you've got this upstream condition that's problematic the county's been dealing with, and the city, because I've received the phone calls from the lady that has gotten a hold of Washington DC because we said, this isn't our problem, because, it's not the city's road, and you're in a floodplain. So it's really like a FEMA issue. You've got, so my concern is if we just do the culvert, then everybody that lives up there is gonna think that we fixed it with the culvert. So at minimum, there's gonna need to be an education outreach piece that says, hey, we fixed the structural integrity of the culvert. We've mitigated the potential sewer line hazard, because if you have high flows and we got the sewer line that's actually exposed under the culvert, that could break open, and it's the force main that goes to the treatment plant. So every bit of sewage goes through there. So that'd be a catastrophic occurrence. So we can address the sewer line issue and the other utilities. We can deal with the structural integrity of the box culvert, which, as you know, we had to fix last year when we closed the road down and we had rotten timbers and we did some Band-Aid repairs. We can deal with that. If we don't address the upstream, then we just need to make sure everybody understands that lives upstream that this isn't going to address your flooding concerns. Or we can say,
So the long and the short here, Mark, is so there'll be a scope here with alternatives.
Yes.
And we could, so this only gets us to 30%.
Right, to
What's
get-
the cost to get to 100% once we determine what alternatives we want to choose?
another 250 to 300,000 is, they've basically said, once we go through this alternatives analysis and we have a fixed end product, it'll be somewhere in that range to get it to ad ready. So I think we absolutely have to go through this initial stage.
Okay, so the ask is, we thought it was gonna cost us $500,000 to design all of it,
All right,
and it's not.
it's just a fraction.
This is 30%, this is a 30% design, will give us alternatives. Once we do this work, then the next check-in, here's all your alternatives, and Mark's saying it'll be another $250 to $300,000 then to get to the 100% design.
Which we could get at that point through the LIO or
We might be able to, but
Yeah.
final design plus
Well,
construction.
If nothing else, we're continuing to lean on the stormwater utility to pay for this activity. And that's what the intent of it is to solve our culvert problems and our flooding issues.
We need to scope this, and we have this, and the city already is dealing with that with the Department of Transportation on Johnson Creek, which comes down Port Orchard Boulevard. That's another road in development that was built in an actual estuary. I mean, visualize by the old clam bake where the swim deck is now, Ross Creek. That's what both these used to look like at one time, and they were,
So
Bayside
let's set that
Falls.
aside and deal with the issue at hand.
So,
So, yeah, are we comfortable bringing this forward to the full council?
Yeah, I have, can you help me understand, I know that the upstream homeowners impact us, but are they impacted by their neighbors uphill from them right now?
no, not really. I mean, other than you have a main
Okay.
watershed that runs through there. It's really just Arnold, the road itself. There's, and actually most of the houses are on the east side. There's a few on the west, and I don't,
They were trying to figure out how many houses or properties are involved.
That's not the issue here
Yeah.
right now. The
Yeah.
issue is designing a potential project that could involve that.
Right.
We don't know that it does at this point. That's a future decision.
that'll come out of this analysis to determine.
When we can naturalize that outlet, we'll have a better understanding of the dynamics upstream to be able to do that upstream assessment that you're
Right.
discussing.
That's a potential outcome. It's not what we're.
No, I was just kind of showing you the whole scope of why this was a much larger fish to fillet.
We don't really have a choice, do we? I mean, we
Well,
really
well,
have to
that's
go
okay.
forward with.
We'll have choices once we have this body of work
Yeah.
to determine, are we just gonna do an outreach program and make these people aware that we're only fixing this culvert and this is your problem?
Flooding is an information.
Or the county's gonna come forward and say, hey, we wanna participate in this with you, and we've got some grant opportunity that we've been able to obtain that solves a bigger problem. And we won't know until we have a design, what the scope is and, what that can mean. But we don't want to do 100% design on the maybe. We want to take this far enough along so we can analyze the big picture and have, the different options, and we'll have a better understanding of the scope and the cost of those bigger options once we have this study, this partial design done.
So at this point, I'd like to actually
Is it
either
next
just,
week's council?
not next week's,
There isn't a next week, it's 2 weeks away.
2 weeks.
right.
Next council.
Yeah, so it can be, I can bring it to a council or I can bring it to a work study. It's whatever,
I don't know, you take 2 works.
No, I think just council.
just bring it to council.
Do you feel differently?
I can tell you,
We can discuss it there.
that
Yeah,
house at the
yeah.
very bottom tomorrow would love to be bought out. Oh, no? Yeah, the lowest house.
Is that one in the county?
Yeah, it's a county code compliance issue.
Below sea level, huh?
Okay, the next, so I'll get a contract together and move forward. The next item is, we're trying to get so the city's never had a franchise agreement with West Sound. We actually, I found out here recently that we only have a franchise agreement with Wave, CenturyLink, and Cascade, no.
PSE.
We don't. We have one with Puget Sound Energy and Wave. We don't have it with CenturyLink or Cascade or West Sound or KPUD. So I've been working with the attorney. We finished the one with Wave. And one of the key things in these franchise agreements now is that when we issue a right-of-way permit, the right-of-way permit requires a performance bond. And then once the work is done and it's acceptable, the performance bond goes away and they put a 2-year maintenance bond in its place. And so how we're structuring this, and Wave Cable is perfectly fine with it, and the other agencies will too, is they're basically gonna have how much work they do in the right of way year, they'll say whether they do a $20,000 or a $50,000 bond with a bank, some sort of surety, right? And what we're gonna do is we've set up a system to track it. So an agency puts work on a performance, it's covered by their amount in the bank. Think of it as a bank account. When their work's done, that comes off, and now a 2-year maintenance bond comes in its place at 20% of that value. So now you've charged against that balance a certain amount. And as you keep getting permits, the performance bonds come on and off, but the 2-year maintenance bonds stay on for a longer time, but ultimately they come off. So there'll always be like an available balance.
So the long and the short of it is, we don't have any teeth to go back when the work is substandard, when these folks work in our streets. So they're out putting utilities in, and they're not. And Mark's got some examples. West Sound's trying to say, hey, we're your partners, we shouldn't have to be subject to this. But they aren't responsible for the roads, we are.
Right.
And so then a year goes by, and then we go back and have to fix the street that they should have fixed properly the first time.
Right. So we've gone through 2 iterations with West Sound. West Sound's come back the second time, just blatantly.
Can I interrupt you? So when they're presented with that issue, what is their response?
We're your partner, we shouldn't have to. We're doing utility work just like you are. And they are doing utility work just like we are. The difference is, when we do a bad patch, we go back and fix it on our dime. When they do a bad patch,
We go back
and fix it on our dime.
Right.
We want them to fix it if they do bad work.
So this is our second time through West Sound, and they've come back the second time just
So I want
literally.
to send back with those pictures. If you guys agree. So we're to the point of, this is a policy directive, because we're saying we think you do impact.
We thought we already had it with them.
Okay. And I'd like copies of those pictures too, so when I talk to the commissioners.
That
So
fills in
we're-
a gap for me, because every now and then I see that, and I'm like, how could that be? How could something like that exist on our?
Well, a lot of times it's so when we issue again a right-of-way permit, contractors either do it for us, or CenturyLink or Puget Sound Energy hires contractors. We have to get to the point where they're all providing a bond, and if it fails, we have that 2-year bond. And that's been a priority here the last 1.5 years, and I've been working with Sharon on it. Wave took a little longer because it was our first one, and now we templated that. We got a hold of West Sound, and they're just like, no, we're not doing this.
So is the directive that all the utilities should provide a maintenance bond?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we've set up the system to track it. It's very simple.
But
It only
Is it
makes
the al-
sense. It's only responsible to the taxpayers.
Is it the other alternative that they get individual permits and individual bonds for every project that they do in the absence of this agreement?
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
Yeah.
Right. Which
So
is-
we won't permit their improvements unless you.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's where we're at, is we'll just tell West Sound, we're not gonna give you a right-of-way permit. And if you try to do it without a right-of-way permit,
Well,
we'll
that's a
we'll
problem.
tag you.
Yeah.
There are streets,
It
and
makes
they're being
sense.
damaged.
It makes sense.
But do it with a smile.
Oh, we always do.
Okay, Rob. Okay, okay, Nick is here today. He's gonna, Nick and Thomas, to talk about, we know we're establishing code for accessory dwelling units, and we just want to make sure that we have a conversation that has to do with.
I
water
don't
and
think
sewer
Fred
rates.
and Cindy have heard about that yet, but the planning commission at the February meeting is having a hearing on accessory dwelling units. We currently allow them, but we don't have much in the way of standards, and we're trying to make, I think the idea is that we want to make it easier to permit them and get better results when they are permitted. And so we brought forward an ordinance that the planning commission is hopefully going to recommend and bring forward for your consideration. But along with that, we need to talk about the water and sewer connection fee policies. Currently, our water and sewer chapter talks about mother-in-law apartments, so it uses a totally different term to refer to what is in our land use code as an accessory dwelling unit. And so the first thing is to make the terms match up so that we're talking about the same thing. I think the policy question really relates to, some cities choose to charge additional connection fees for an accessory dwelling unit and some don't. And I think that how a city treats ADUs really depends on what your fee policy should be. Ours has an owner occupancy requirement, meaning that the owner has to occupy one of the 2 units on the property and that you can't rent them out independently. And so my thought is that when you have an owner occupied ADU, you are probably, I mean, and I think at least, I know Councilmember Ashby actually has an ADU in her place, and she rents out a space to to a tenant, and so there are 2 adults living in the building. It seems to me that if you have a family living in a house that would have an ADU, you're probably not renting out the ADU. You're probably using it for your in-laws or something else, and so it's really difficult to say when an ADU has an additional impact and when it doesn't. And I guess my hope was that we would establish a policy to treat, because it's an accessory use and we don't charge a connection fee for any other accessory use, we would be consistent with ADUs when we build them so that you're not having to pay that capital charge at the time you build one of those units.
Well, to me, the city's always had, if you have one property, you have one water connection and one sewer connection. You don't have multiple because that gets confusing. However, they split that up internally. You're getting paid for the water you use, and we don't charge sewage on consumption. We've had that kind of conversation. Do we want to go there? But since we're not there, you're just charging for that sewer availability. So I don't see the ADU, and correct me if I'm wrong, I know Public Works doesn't support doing anything that changes that you have one water and one sewer connection per parcel, because otherwise it gets very complicated.
As soon as you have a duplex where you have 2
meters.
dwelling units that can be occupied by separate non-owners where they would both be rentals, that's when you would trigger the requirement to have a separate
Right.
connection.
But that's
So-
when it's established both from a land use perspective and in utility building as a duplex or a triplex.
And Nick and I have talked about this, a bit, and I think the ADU is the impact is so small that I don't see any reason why we would want to, encumber the ability for people to get affordable, housing or have your mother-in-law or whatever. So I know that we're supportive of the idea.
And I think, I guess the other thing is previously it differentiated between attached and detached, and really if you have an ADU, the impacts are going to be the same whether it's attached or detached. And why are you saying that a detached ADU has to pay an additional fee compared to the attached ADU? So this also addresses then the monthly stormwater connections, meaning that the ADU would not be charged additional ISU for storm, as long as it's truly an ADU where there's an owner occupied one of the 2 buildings, it would be billed as one.
Could there be a trigger
house.
if they exceed a certain square footage?
No,
That's for
ours triggers after you get to a,
3,000.
fourplex? Well, an ISU, impervious surface unit, is 3,000 square feet, but anything is considered single family up until
It's just flat.
multifamily, right?
Yeah.
So
So we're just averaging.
single family, duplex, triplex is just,
So you could have a single family, 6,000 square foot house and they're still only gonna get charged for 3,000 square
Yep.
feet.
or you could have a triplex,
Mm-hmm.
6,000 square feet, and you still get the one ISU. It isn't until you hit 4 or more units
Okay.
that the multifamily kicks in,
Yeah.
or then where we actually assess how many square feet you have, or we actually go onto the property.
And I think our other concern here was, how does West Sound's involvement, tie into this proposed code language? And I think that what we've determined recently is that when you replace a sewer line on your property, or when you replace your water line, it's a plumbing permit, not a utility permit. And so you're just permitting a plumbing activity tying into your existing connection. West Sound wouldn't even know about this, and the city sewer department wouldn't even know about this unless they were tapping a sewer main and coming into the sewer main at a different point,
Right.
or doing some work in the right of way. So it
So
would be
this
handled
could,
under the plumbing code.
this would go into effect though in West Sound's area, that was within the city though too.
Correct. Correct. So we can certainly let them know that we're tweaking our policy, which really isn't that inconsistent with our current mother-in-law policy. But, as far as we're concerned, it's a plumbing permit, and if we're gonna treat accessory dwelling units differently, then we need to talk about accessory uses like small, home businesses. Our home business is gonna get charged extra because they're also an accessory use in a residential area. So hopefully clarifying this combined with the ordinance that we're bringing forward is going to make it easier to build an ADU, and will increase the supply of affordable housing and also give existing residents an opportunity for some income if they wanted to make an investment like this.
You might be surprised how many people are already doing this. When we're out campaigning, you see garages and everything else.
Mhm.
The most unusual structures have people living in them with hoses running. It's incredible what you see.
Well, and even, we talked about with the ability to get to downtown Seattle becoming easier and easier by boat, finding some affordable housing here and just, it makes sense.
One of the things that I would like to do if this passes up is there's a couple of companies in the Puget Sound area that build prefab backyard cottages that are really attractive craftsman style cottages. And I would like to request that they submit plans and have them pre-approved so that if somebody wants to build something kind of off the shelf, the plans are already approved, they meet the design standards, we can just say this is how much it's going to cost to permit. They can purchase the thing and they bring it on a truck and a crane and it's set up and ready to go within a week.
Have you seen
What
the
do you
Facebook
think-
Townsend?
Not sure.
I want one.
Have you considered the cost for acquisition of those plans and what that might be?
My thought is actually that the companies who sell these things would be willing to just provide their plans and we would pre-review them as a way to encourage affordable housing.
Are they the contractor as well for putting them together?
Some of them are. It depends.
That's their incentive?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so-
Yeah, the plans can't be used without paying that architect or whoever designed the
Right.
structure, but
We're just pre-approving.
yeah.
So-
Yeah, there's two companies I know of specifically that have a couple of different models of backyard cottage that I'd like to reach out to and see if they'd be interested.
Yeah,
We
so-
might
Do we
wanna-
do that?
We
What?
might want to talk with Cindy about, we might need to get 3 different ones. is what I'm
That's-
thinking.
Well, I was potentially gonna do an RFP and then call them and say, hey, we have an RFP out that we're requesting people submit plans and we're willing to put them, to review them and approve them and have them on the shelf ready to go.
Yeah.
Do we have a compatibility requirement? I know we're getting off track of it, but with ADUs?
In the ADU, yeah, but I think if we go through a review and find plan designs that are sort of consistent with the character of Port Orchard, we could probably,
I'm sorry, I mean more with the present structure on site.
no, I mean,
Okay.
yeah, I think other than
Like
same color.
architectural guidelines.
Yeah,
Well, I know
color.
that some jurisdictions want the primary and the AD to be kind of consistent in appearance and siding material and all that kind of stuff.
50% model.
yeah, I think if it's in the backyard, that's not as important. If it's visible from the street, then that is more.
Yeah, there's not a lot of downsides to the ADU other than if you have adult children that refuse to
Leave.
move out of your
They
ADU.
keep raiding your fridge.
You wouldn't know about that though, would you?
No, I wouldn't know that. Yeah, no,
All right.
and they think the main house is Safeway.
Remember the Supreme Court?
Yes.
Change the locks.
Okay, Marina Pump Station. So, some news on the Marina Pump Station. So what you have in your packet is the RFP, the second RFP that we sent out so that we both advertised and selected off the roster. Fortunately, this isn't FHWA funded. Okay.
Yeah.
So where we're at right now is today I've just scored, I think we received 5 or 6?
5.
5. I've scored those 5. I'm waiting for the rest of the team to score and give me those numbers. We're going to interview 3. And so we want to move ahead with this project. We need to move ahead with this project. The other new news is that we had hoped that we were going to get a grant for this project. We found out Friday late that we did not receive the grant, but we do have the option to do a $4.1 million low interest, 2% over a 20-year period loan. I think finance department's going to be looking at
Got that information to know it this
cash
morning.
flowing. I think this is a absolute must. I don't think we have a choice to not move forward with this.
So, yeah, the project was scored, there was $400 million worth of projects submitted to the clean water application through Ecology. The city of Port Orchard ranked number 11 out of 127. Only the top 3 projects were funded through grant. There were some other smaller grant allocations, but they were in the $100,000 range. So we were close. We were really close. But the loan that they're offering is 20-year repayment, 2%. It has the same requirements as many other ecology grant and loan stuff.
It's like our DWSRF. It's
Yeah.
Buy American and all that.
So remember the presentation we had about the holistic outlook of our sewer utility. There's 3 major components to that are in actually in Katie Isaacson's work that contemplated we would have to borrow money funds for or get a grant. And we were applying for the grant. The most pressing is that lift station 1 at McCormick Woods. Next is this Marina Pump Station, and then followed behind that the second lift station at McCormick Woods. So right now Noah's been tasked with, he's got to get this done in the next week or 2, holistically looking at our cash flow and finances and, you know, can we pull off with our own cash lift station 1, followed up by, is this bonding or this loan the right tool? I think it is, but we need to finance to confirm that. And then from there, do we have enough cash from connection fees and rates for the following year? I think it's going to be 1, 2, and 3. Over the next 3 years, we're going to have 3 significant sewer projects. And tonight's council meeting, I'm going to talk a little bit about the pile of work that's backing up, and we're probably going to need to get some help to the Public Works Department to keep their heads above water, because there's more than they can handle right now.
So with that, I think Thomas, being the water sewer manager, you'll want to be reaching out at some point to let them know of our interest.
Yeah. My plan was to make contact. Actually, there's a couple of different people I got to make contact with this week. One of them is Janet Cherry with DWSRF to find out what that funding cycle is going to look like and all that.
For
And then,
well 13.
Yep, and then I'll be reaching out to Ecology to figure out what our next step is, what our deadlines are for commitments and construction.
Is this going to be managed through Ecology, or is Commerce going to?
It'll be managed through Ecology, I believe. Yeah.
So the other piece was too, our well 13 project was on hold because of the capital budget. That got freed up Friday. So we had a project that we were on hold with, and we were gonna backfill with another project, and now both projects are running ahead. So it's good problems, but we gotta be able to manage it and perform and not screw something up because we got too much going on.
Right, well 13, we're going to get some additional time, so we need to find out exactly how much that additional time is, because we were supposed to have been done with that at the end of June of 2018?
Yeah.
June 30th, so that's not going to happen.
We're not done designing yet.
Yeah, but we're at the point now where we can focus. All legislative kind of decisions for the city have been made, alternatives. We're ready just to get moving on that. So the last item is well 9, and we re-advertised that. We had an issue with that we had to pull the previous advertisement, if you remember, had to do with the manganese treatment and some misunderstanding. So between the procurement and that, we decided to pull this advertisement and go back out again. Friday was the first of 2, so we're advertising on the 19th and the 26th. The Independent, the Daily Journal of Commerce, and then it was uploaded to the Builders Exchange. And so we'll be opening bids February 16th and get moving on that project, which 375 working days.
And we changed that to 250.
Is down to 250. I just think we had a lesser one that we scratched our head on, and then
Right.
suddenly it jumped to 375, and we said, no, that's way too much time. So, we're at 250 working days. We feel like that's a good value, and this is obviously already budgeted in our current reserve fund. We allocated 1.6 million, I think, for the construction and construction administration. So that will get basically polylusite,
Green sand, right?
green sand treatment system. It'll get us a new restroom that'll be over by the tennis courts, and the old restroom will be removed. We're already kind of working in coordination with the soccer club that uses that facility, that we're going to do work that will allow them to continue to use that facility in the fall. And then so we got to get that sewer line across the park this summer. It's going to affect the Boy Scouts' use. I think we've said that they're not going to be able to use the facility this year. So we'll get that bathroom moved and get the sewer line across the
You have a
field.
pretty bad bathroom like Cormac?
Yep, same one.
Okay.
So we'll do all that work first. And anything, that's the other thing we did on a revised, is we actually established some phasing, and that was one of the main things, is the new restroom and the sewer line.
And we're out on the street right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
It'll be nice.
When's it closed?
close of the 16th, February 16th.
Okay.
So we'll be in those last meeting of February, hopefully with a viable contract.
Yeah, I mean, I think that our goal from a public works standpoint on that facility is improved water quality, a nice new bathroom that a mom doesn't have to walk her kid all the way across the field to get to, and the tennis courts are gonna be redone, so
Right.
it should be.
For, with pickleball, if I recall.
Pickleball, tennis, new nets, painted 2 different colors for both.
Nice.
Yeah.
That'll be nice.
Yeah, very nice.
I noticed
And
your
when
next
does-
meeting date's is a holiday.
The 19th, yeah.
The 19th is a holiday?
Oh.
President's Day.
President's Day.
When?
Can you do the next day? You don't want to do it
When will
on
this
Tuesday
project be
though,
done?
for-
No, I think we would just go to we either
Monday.
miss February's and just go to March, or we do the following week. I didn't bring I'll propose some
The
dates.
26th.
Is it the 26th?
7.
I'm gonna be gone that day.
Yeah, on the 26th.
Uh-huh.
19th? It may be that we're gonna be,
Just miss the meeting, or?
yeah, let's just do March, then go to the March meeting, because a lot of the stuff will be kind of
You're gonna be working on
in the
projects
works,
we
so I think if
discussed.
we,
I think the next step of all of these sewer improvements is finance weighing in on
Yes.
what we can afford to do.
Right.
And then it'll come back to this
Financing.
committee, say, yes, the cash flow works, or the financing plan works.
March 12th.
You know, are these, you know, what's the prioritization?
March 12th.
that's
Second
the third?
Tuesday.
I thought we
Second
were
or third?
Third.
Sorry.
third Tuesday.
19th.
Yeah.
Okay,
March
so
19th.
let's look at March 19th.
Rob, did you have a chance to read Chelsea's?
Last night I did.
Okay. Is that gonna work for you for council, or do you want me to write something else?
I don't recall.
Talking about the pilot program.
Yeah, I'm just, at a high level, I'm just gonna say that there's an opportunity, we're gonna get a chance to participate in a mitigation program.
Right.
And that we used to be able to allow off-site mitigation. There's a federal case that prevents that. We're participating, and with our two new wells that we're gonna be drilling, this is an excellent opportunity to us to participate in this program and be able to once again potentially do off-site mitigation.
Right. At a significant savings to the city.
Yeah. So we were one of 5 cities selected for a pilot program for off-site mitigation and related to water projects, so.
And it's not just a savings to the city. It helps us maintain our water rights and move forward on those projects. And thirdly, the mitigation that's performed is way more meaningful to, in-stream flow. It actually does something for fish. Putting chlorinated water into a creek doesn't really do anything. So,
That's the wrong pH and the wrong temperature.
right.
Yeah.
I
You
will
around
be-
this morning?
Yeah.
I'll talk to you about it before I call Posse back.
Good of the order. So this is my last meeting. So I
Uh,
wanted to thank you for all you guys do. It's a lot of work you guys are doing and you do it well. So I wanted to be involved, but I also wanted to diversify my kind of awareness of city work and committees, and so.
You're leaving the best committee.
Aye.
That's all right.
Second best committee, yeah.
Oh.
Well, I'm all right, these guys.
I was gonna say, spoken like a true